Hey, stepmamas, welcome to the Stepmom Unfiltered podcast. This is your go to space for unapologetic, unfiltered conversations about the roller coaster ride of stepmotherhood. We're your hosts. I'm Adrienne.
And I'm Amelia. We understand that being a stepmom is like walking a tightrope in stilettos. So we're here to help you embrace the messiness, laugh through the craziness, and find strength in our shared experiences.
This podcast is more than just a series of episodes, it's a community for stepmoms to be real, raw, and unfiltered. Buckle up because we're about to embark on a journey of candid conversations, taboo topics, and expert insights.
This is the Stepmom Unfiltered podcast, your sanctuary for real talk and real solutions.
Hey, Amelia, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Glad to be back for the next episode.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one.
I am too. So this actually just came up recently, which is why we decided to talk about it. So we're going to dive into a conversation about when to step back, how to disengage, make sure it's productive, um, to know when and how to. Um, so let's do it.
Yeah, well, let's be honest. You said it just came up. Let's be honest, it comes up all the time. We're constantly having to figure out, do I step in and do I step back? It's
True.
an ongoing issue in step families. So, yeah.
It is. And it's not easy. And I think there's ways that can be really detrimental and damaging to relationships. But yet, let's face it, we're humans and we're filled with emotions and feelings.
Yeah.
And that's part of it, right? Is identifying when we care more than the other person cares. And I think that's a big
Mm-hmm.
part of it is
Yeah.
learning to know that we can't be more invested than somebody else is. So in step families, we can't, as a step parent, you can't be more invested than the parents are in their child's life, or that can create a lot of turmoil, pain, hurt, suffering, all kinds of things, and be
Um,
damaging to relationships.
yeah. Super damaging to marriages.
Yeah, we don't need higher divorce rates. We've already
No,
contributed those in the beginning.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And, the reason that I really worked on this for myself was because I noticed in my earlier years, a lot of my earlier years, um, that there was just a lot of arguments over, like you said, caring, like I was caring too much. And that was causing, not that I was caring too much, I was caring more than other people were. And then that was causing, like you said, a lot of hurt and pain and frustration and issues within my relationship. So I had to really dive deep to figure out when do I, like, when is it my job as a stepmom to step in? And when is it my job to go, well, you know what? The parents have it covered, and I can take a step back and shift my focus to something else. Um, so yeah, this one really hits home for me.
Well, and even in just the last few sentences that you spoke, there's so much to unpack there. Because as you were talking, I was thinking, gosh, you're right. Like there's the feeling side of it. Then there's the what is my role? And have we
Mhm.
defined that? Have we communicated with each other as co parents, both within your home and your partner, and also with the exes and those co parenting relationships? And then there's also the element of the role of a stepmom in general and society's views on it and the
Mhm.
you're supposed to care, you're supposed to love them as your own, but
Yeah,
oh wait, don't overstep,
but
you're
don't.
overstepping now.
Yeah.
So it's that
Yeah.
that tug of war that you experience and feel. So I know I
Yeah.
just took us down about five different
Yeah,
paths,
I was
all
gonna
within
say
a
that.
few sentences,
Yeah.
and that tells you the complexity yet again of these situations.
Yeah.
And I think there's some highlights around it, right? Is what is the role? What is your role as a stepmom? How do you define it and how do you have those conversations and communicate it? And and then how do you live up to it? How do you set those
Hmm.
boundaries and how do you know when to step in and when to step out? And how do you find the healthy balance with that as well? Um, which
Yeah, well, I think the first thing, if I could go back, one of the first things I would do is really get clear about what is the expectation? What do I expect my role to be, and what does my husband expect my role to be? Um, I think that would have provided a lot of clarity. So I think,
right.
if I could go back, that's definitely, am I involved with schoolwork? Am I involved with, healthcare decisions or,
Mhm.
even attending those types of appointments? Am I involved with, is it my responsibility even to cook all the meals while the stepchild is here? Like, get down to the nitty-gritty and sort all of that out because that's really going to help you to determine. It's just going to provide you clarity, which is going to
Right.
reduce a lot of frustration, right?
Well, and I think you nailed it. The nitty-gritty actually matters in these conversations because I know for
Yeah.
me, right, I was a mom first and a stepmom second. And so a lot of those roles that you just described were what I was already doing. And it seemed so
Yeah.
natural. And it was like, well, I'm already doing it. Why wouldn't I do it for my stepchildren? And I never had any intention of stepping on bio mom's toes. Like I wasn't doing it to replace her.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I was very aware I'm not here to replace anyone, but in our home, on our time,
Yeah.
these are kids that I'm
Yeah.
responsible for,
Your
and
mom.
at the same time, I am cooking the meals, I am doing the homework, I am checking the grades, I am doing all these things, running to the sports and extracurricular activities.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I do it for 2 but not the
Not the
other
others.
2? That seemed unfair in my mind. And it wasn't, of course, you get well into these things before you have the wisdom to say, "Oh, wait, maybe we should actually have some conversation and define things."
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know when you jump in, especially when you're already parents and you think this is so normal and natural. So when we stepped back and had those conversations, it made a huge difference in our home.
Yeah. And even like when you were saying like you were already cooking the meals, like you're the mom, that was what you do. And I remember I worked with a client a couple of years ago, and one of her things was, when the stepkids come, it's always my responsibility to cook all of the meals. And it was really causing some resentment. And so I said to her, like, one of the things we need to do is figure out the expectation. And maybe one of the things we need to do is figure out a better routine when the stepkids are there. Maybe one night your husband is cooking a meal, and maybe one night your stepkids are helping to clean up. Like, how
Mhm.
can we reduce the resentment, right? Obviously, you can't just give up cooking for your family. Like, your
Right.
kids can't do that. But what are some ways that you can find a new approach to make it a little lighter for yourself, right?
Right. You
Um,
also don't have to be the only one cooking every night, regardless of
Absolutely.
who's there. It's about defining roles and responsibilities just for your family and your home in general.
Well, and we always talk about like building relationships, and it's like one of a great way to just have really easy time together is cooking a meal. You've got one child over here chopping up some vegetables, one's doing the dishes as as you're cooking to keep the kitchen cleaned up. Like there's lots of ways that you can get the kids involved in the kitchen. Um, so, yeah, that's just one example. We're
We
kind of
did I love that too because I know in our home, our kids did help and they loved to help. I mean, as they get older, teenagers, it comes and goes. Uh,
Yeah,
but I'll tell you, now they all know how to cook for themselves and they all know what they like to eat and how to prepare meals and how to use, the different tools in a kitchen. So there's also those benefits. You teach them the
absolutely.
responsibility and the
Yeah.
accountability. Wow, I know for us, having girls, they get chatting and I get to hear all
Yeah.
kinds of conversation. And to your point, that builds the relationships. And it was great interaction. And family dinner time in our home is quite comical and entertaining, never to be aired publicly.
Yeah.
But I'm really proud of the conversations our kids have because they're so open and they share so much
hmm
more than what I think you probably find in a lot of homes today
hmm
with kids and teenagers. So I do think that building those tools when they're young and having the consistency pays off in multiple different facets. It's not even just about step family life and boundaries and who does what
Right. Yeah.
responsibilities. Like there's so many added benefits to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree 100% for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
I
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think we wanted to talk though about, so, what can you do if you're struggling to know when to step in and when to step back? I know for me, a lot of times when I would try to step back, it was perceived sometimes by my husband as a, well, you don't care? You know, because I wasn't doing it maybe in the best way, or I wasn't articulating what I was trying to do in the best way. So he was perceiving it not in the way I wanted him to.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so when I developed these steps and learned these steps, it made things a lot easier, and sometimes doesn't necessarily even involve a conversation with my husband, because I can look at these things and say to myself like, "Oh yes, I need to stay involved," or "Nope, it's time for me to just back off and I can shift my focus elsewhere because this is already taken care of."
Yeah, what the visual that came to mind for me when we were talking through these steps is a teeter-totter, right?
Mhm.
This isn't an all or a nothing. There's a spectrum, and to your point, it's about finding out where you are in a situation and how big of an impact it has and how much how big of a topic is it and how much does it matter? And it's a give and a take. And instead of the teeter-totter being all the way up or all the way down, it's can we find closer to the balance and have less of the big swings in it.
Right.
And then when we find that balance, we find more of the calm and the peace in our homes.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, I know. So the 5 steps that were laid out, let's go through those because I think that that's really helpful to people. And then we can tell them where they can find the more in depth guide around this.
Yeah. Yeah. So step 1 is when I'm looking to decide, do I need to get involved, is if something is going on with my stepdaughter. The first thing I ask myself is, does the outcome of what she's doing or what is happening with her or whatever, or with the ex, does it directly affect me or my children or inside of my home? So that's number one. I need to ask myself, does it affect me, my kids, or inside of my home?
I think
That's
I think the key there that you said was does it directly affect you? And
yes.
I think this is where we have to be really honest with
Honest.
ourselves first and
Mhm.
foremost, right? Because it's easy to say,
Yeah.
well, that impacts me
Yeah,
because, or,
that yeah.
okay, let's really get down to brass tacks and really think about, okay, is this affecting my schedule? Am I needing to modify my work schedule to accommodate a pickup? Is there something that actually really impacts me directly? Or is it something damaging to the other children within the home if this decision's made or not made? Um,
And I will say, when I used to ask myself this question, when I used to try and do this, I would I was still in the stages where I would tell myself a lot of stories instead of sticking to the facts. So
Mm.
there was still a lot of times where I would be like, "Well, yes, this is gonna affect me in this way 20 years down the road because this is gonna happen if this happens right now." Particularly, I'll give you an example. I'll be very vulnerable. This is the unfiltered Stepmom podcast, so let's be unfiltered. I had concerns about my stepdaughter's education and how that was being handled with some roadblocks that I saw. And it got to the point where I needed to figure out where do I fit in to this equation. And so I asked myself, like, does she has two parents? Does this really affect me? What I'm seeing here, does it really affect me? And I told myself, well, yes, it does, because if she doesn't get the help that I think she needs right now, she's not going to do as well as she should. Maybe she's not going to be able to go to college or university. Maybe she's not going to get a job that's going to support her. Maybe she's going to have to live with us forever.
Mhm. And it's
And so
easy to go down that rabbit hole
it
of,
is.
and that's logical, right? Because at the end of the day, you do care and you
I
want
do care,
to care,
but
but
those were stories.
does it directly affect you?
Right, and were those facts or are those stories? Well, those are not facts. Just because something that I saw that she was struggling with, that I think she's struggling with, that doesn't mean that she's not gonna be able to go to college or university. It doesn't mean that she's not gonna have a good job and be able to support herself. It doesn't mean that she's gonna live with us for the rest of her life. So, in the beginning, I really had to learn to check myself and be like, stick to the facts. So, but yeah, number 1, does it affect you, your kids, or your home?
I love that, and stick to the facts when you're answering it. Facts are
Mhm.
our friend in this situation.
They definitely are.
Yeah, we could do a whole episode on stories versus facts because I think sometimes it's
Oh,
powerful to turn our adult brains off because we have all this context and life experience, and sometimes we put our thoughts through that filter and we go down this assumption of like, well, this and this and this, but like you said, it doesn't mean any of those things. Even if she is struggling right now in this area,
right.
it'll be different in 2 weeks and in 2 years, and so much will
Absolutely.
change in that time frame.
Mhm.
Love it. Step 2.
Yeah, so step 2 is my partner and or the other parent actively taking care of the situation in a way that they feel is best? So again, it's a little tricky, because the ego really wants to get involved here. Um, but are they taking care of it in the way that they, the parents,
Mhm.
see fit? And
Yep.
sometimes that can be really, really hard,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, that can be hard. It's not hard just because of ego, right? But it's also hard because it goes back to that as a step parent, a lot of times we're given all the responsibility and none of the benefit of that. And then
Mhm.
there's also the added element of like I know when my husband and I got married and realized we were blending families, it was like, well, we have to decide how we're going to raise the kids in our home on our time. And
Mhm.
so there is this like we made the decision that we were in it together. We were all in. We were the parents in our home. It doesn't cut out either of the other parents. We
Right.
want them actively involved,
Yeah.
but there's what's inside of our home and then there's the bigger picture of this child's life in both homes.
Right. And
And
that is what we're talking about here, is the
right,
bigger not just what's happening in your home, because I definitely I don't say, that the ex needs to have a say what goes on in your home.
right.
That's another topic.
Yeah.
That's another episode that we will cover. But no, that's not what I mean. I'm
But it's an
talking about
important
bigger.
distinction.
Absolutely. I'm talking about this is bigger picture issues that,
Yes.
like you said, affect the child's life, not necessarily in one home or the other.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yes. So again, using, education as an example, is one of the parents seeking the help or help that they think is best? Might not be what I think is best, but are
Mhm.
they doing something? Um, and that's the thing. e- Even in a nuclear family, you're going to have disagreements with a
That's right.
husband or a wife about what is best for the kids, and if a child's struggling, do they need a tutor, do they need to um
Absolutely.
so yeah, it's okay, but yeah, you really need to look at, because this is not a nuclear family, and it will never be a nuclear family, and it will never function like a nuclear family,
Yep.
and that's another topic for another day. Um, so yeah, you have to look at it that way.
Yeah. I
And
think
is
I was just say I think step 3 for me is really something that helps deal with step 1 and 2, even though it's 3rd in order here.
Mhm,
And is my stepchild in any immediate physical or emotional danger? Um,
right.
are they going to get harmed physically or emotionally if I don't step in? And
Mhm,
that, when you ask that question, it's a lot easier to get down to the facts and separate out the stories and the cold, hard facts and
mhm,
remove the ego and look just at what's in this child's well being. And
right.
even if a situation's not being handled the way that I would do it,
Yeah.
there's a million different ways to do everything, and my answers
Mhm,
aren't always the only answers or the best answers. It's one perspective in a lot of perspectives. And so when you ask that question, that for me is when I really paused and went, "Okay, I gotta turn the ego off. I gotta shut down
mhm.
the adult brain,
Yeah.
and I gotta get down to the core of, okay, is this child in physical or emotional danger? Or is it
Right,
being handled? Whether it's to my liking or not is irrelevant. I
right.
have to suck it up and just deal with the facts."
Well, and again, that's the thing, it's not a nuclear family. It's not going to function like a nuclear family. And the fact is, the child has two parents,
Mhm.
and sometimes they do get to have the final say. Like sometimes you don't get to have a say.
That's right.
Um, that's the reality of this life.
Mhm.
Um, and it's okay. Like it's not the end of the world. When you can learn to like disengage in a positive way and not look at everything as like, well, fine, then I'm stepping back. Like it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be, you know. Um,
That was
so yeah.
that was a hard lesson for me, if I'm being honest. That it's not all or nothing when you step back or
Right.
disengage. It doesn't ha
Yeah.
like you said, it doesn't have to be snarky and it doesn't have to be,
Not
well,
at all.
fine, then if I'm not involved in anything. And that I'm
Right.
gonna be honest, that was an approach I took at a point in time with one of my
Yep.
stepchildren, and it was like all or nothing because my
Hmm.
brain could not wrap around anything but that.
Right.
And that's the work that I had to do to dig deep and really sort out the emotions and the feelings and work through those pieces to be able to say, okay, I can disengage in certain situations and at moments in time and still love this child and still support this
Yeah.
child and still pour into them and still have a
Hmm.
family unit that's healthy and productive for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm not saying any of these steps are easy because they're
No,
not. And like
they're
I
not.
still struggle. Like I'm certainly not a pro at them, but they help me to assess when I'm feeling really overwhelmed or frustrated, if I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know what to do here, so
Yep,
being able to go through these, and just to help bring clarity, right? But we're still human beings. And like you
that's
said,
right.
it doesn't mean we stop loving our stepkids, right?
That's right.
We still care about them. Like I love my stepdaughter so much, and I want really deep down, I want nothing more than to parent her in the way that I want to.
Mhm,
Right? And sometimes that's very different than what my husband wants as well.
mhm.
Um, but at the end of the day, it's just not always the way it's gonna go, right?
Well, and I
Um,
think it's funny. So, for any of those of you that are listening that are also moms, right? Not just
yeah.
stepmoms, these steps apply to when our children start becoming 17 and 18 years old and becoming adults. And these are the same types of disengaging you have to do as our children grow up. So, it's funny how it mirrors, some of what we go through in step family life and as our children become adults and having to let go. So, I know. Side tip for those of
Yeah.
you that are both mom and stepmom.
Yeah. Get
Oh,
those teenage years, they're fun.
mhm. Yeah, which takes us to step 4.
Mhm.
Am I genuinely concerned about the outcome, or do I just want my opinion heard? And I think this is a big one, right? Because as human beings, sometimes we just want to be heard, and that's okay. That's real. But
Yeah.
to identify the difference and to be able to speak about it and
Yeah.
say to your partner, I'm not trying to persuade you. I'm not looking for a different outcome. I just want to be heard in this moment. Can you please hear my thoughts and feedback?
Mhm.
Sometimes that's all you need. And then you can drop it and you can disengage and do it
Right.
lovingly and still be supportive of your partner and your stepchild. And that's huge.
Absolutely. Um, but I think the other way to look at that is like, are you do you really care about the issue, or are you just trying to be involved to be involved?
Mhm. Yeah.
You're kind of like, no, I'm going to stand my ground. I am, my husband's wife. I get to have a say. Like, and it's like, but do you really care about this issue? you know
Hmm.
Again, it's about the ego, and it's really hard to admit that. I'll be the first one to admit, like, that was me a lot of the time.
Hmm.
I was like, "No, I just want to be involved because I should be,
Right.
right? Like, I am my husband's wife and I have the right to be involved,
Hmm.
and to be heard, and to, all the things." Again, I'm not saying that we don't deserve to be heard, but like, there's a lot of frustrating things that come along with step family life. Like, I could probably find something to be annoyed about every day if I really wanted to.
It's true. Very true.
Right? So, like, at what point do you say, okay, I'm going to choose peace over being heard, being right, being whatever, whatever, whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. It's an important question for that we should all ask ourselves and continuously.
Yeah. And for me, it got to the point where, like, peace within my home, within my four walls of my home,
Yeah,
trumps everything,
that's right.
you know? So sometimes I have to say, like, I I'm concerned, but like I don't care that much that I need to be involved. So I'm gonna sit this one out.
Mhm.
You know?
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know sometimes for me, I had to play the why game. And the why game is when something really bothers me, ask myself why. Why is it
Right.
bothering me?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
then when I answer that, ask why again. And
Mm-hmm.
go to the next layer of that onion. And you keep asking why. And by the time you've asked it 4, 5, 6 times, you normally, if you're being honest with yourself, get
Mm-hmm.
down to the core issue. And a lot of times that core issue could be something from our past or something
I
from our
was just gonna
childhood
say.
or
Yeah.
something from another aspect of our life that has nothing to do with whatever the situation is that we need to feel
Mm-hmm.
heard or our ego is driving. So ask yourself why multiple times
I love
and
that.
get down to that core issue and then work on that, and you'll realize you're so busy working on that, you're healing yourself, and then it's easy to disengage because you're not consumed with whatever the issue was that really is irrelevant to the rest of it.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a huge piece to the puzzle of happiness as a stepmom
Mhm.
and confidence is like figuring your shit out, you know, like just
Well,
diving deep and what is causing you to have these feelings. I know for me, once I figured it out, it's been a game changer because I can in a split second, I can be like, "Oh, that is my abandonment wound is just showing its ugly face right now and I need to just step back."
yeah.
Um
Well, and
but
let's face it, if we're being honest, these are issues that affect all parents, right?
oh,
We
yeah, not
most of
just
us
step
yeah,
families.
most of us don't go into having children healed, like like,
Unscathed,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone has something.
We have
Yeah,
unhealed wounds, we have shadows, we have all these pieces of our lives, and that's what makes us who we are, and it's a good thing and it's beautiful, unless we let it get out of control and we don't pinpoint it and work on ourselves and focus on the good.
yeah, it's been an interesting process for me, honestly, like, all of this work and just diving deep and understanding myself more,
Mhm.
you know, like, understanding my reactions, my actions, like, why do I like you said, asking why, and really understanding myself has been quite the process, and it's very enlightening, um and as hard as it's been to be a stepmom, like, it's also been a blessing because otherwise I don't know that I would have done this work,
Mhm.
you know?
It's true. I feel like being a stepmom has made me a better mom, a better wife, a better employee, a better friend,
Yeah.
because we dug deep, we did the work, we reached out
Mhm.
to each other, we had a tribe, a community,
Yeah.
we read the books, we had the conversations, we cried the tears, all the things, and
Yeah.
we continue to do it. It's a journey, right? It doesn't
Oh,
stop.
yeah.
You
It
don't do
doesn't
this
stop.
once, you don't do this
No.
twice. I mean,
No.
it's how many times do we text each other?
Yeah. I
So,
mean, yeah, I'm what, 13 years, and there's weeks where I'm texting you a few times a week.
yeah,
You know, we're talking it out together.
that's
Yeah,
right.
but it's the thing of it is that I'm not consumed anymore, where as in my earlier years, like my first 7 years, I mean, literally just consumed, like constant.
Yeah,
And it was awful and very lonely, you
right.
know, and wondering how do you even dig out of this mess? Like how do you even
Mhm.
begin to sort it out? Because every time you try to talk, you know, every time I tried to bring something up to my husband, it was an argument, right? And we're both defensive, and then we shut down and we move on and nothing gets resolved, right?
Right, until the
Um,
next issue, and
and then it just, like, piles on top, and then you've got this just like a volcano. It's
that's
awful.
right. Yeah, so instead of a volcano, if you do the work, it's like a little speed bump now where it's like, "Oh, okay, that
Absolutely.
happened, and now we're past it in a healthy way. We haven't swept it under a rug to build the volcano that's about to
Absolutely, like
erupt."
no, that's such a good analogy because it's so true. Yeah,
Mhm. So
yeah.
speaking of your husband and your partner,
Mhm.
let's tell them step 5.
Yeah, step 5, how does the situation look if I view it from my partner or the ex's perspective? Ouch, sometimes I don't wanna look at it from the ex's perspective. Sometimes
Nobody
Sometimes I
does, right?
just don't.
Well, that's true, and that goes back to the ego in some
It
regards.
does.
Mhm.
Absolutely, it does.
But there's so much
But
power in seeing it from somebody else's point of view. Um,
that's the thing. There is so much power in that.
mhm, yeah.
And when
It
you can do that, again, like total game changer
Well, and you
because
strengthen your marriage and you
mhm.
strengthen your relationship with your stepchildren. You just strengthen all your relationships when you stop long enough to listen to the other person and actually hear their point of view and how they're feeling. It doesn't mean that you won't still disagree at the end of it. It doesn't mean that you
Oh
still
yeah.
wouldn't do it a different way. But I have found most of the time when I stop and I actually ask questions to listen and learn and take that in, I walk away a stronger person. I walk away more educated. I walk away more connected.
Yep.
All it's all benefits, right? There's no drawback to it. So why wouldn't we?
Why wouldn't you? I know. And again, like an example of this is with my stepdaughter and things that were with her education. And when I was able to look at it from the ex's perspective of looking at me being involved constantly, trying to give my 2 cents, it was like because she was taking care of it in the way that she thought was best. I didn't think it was best, and I still don't think that's what was best. However, she was taking care of it how she thought was best. So how annoying is it that here I am just chirping away, right? When she's like, "I've got it covered. I'm her mom. I've got it covered, like, really don't need your help." So, no wonder she was frustrated. Like, no wonder she was annoyed with me. No wonder there was hostility building. No wonder there was conflict. And my husband, God bless him, he doesn't not that he doesn't care about her education, because he does, but it's just, like, it's not the top of his list. Like, it wasn't the top of his list. It
Right.
wasn't, um and he just sees things differently. So, I was trying to fight a battle with him that he truly didn't not that he didn't care about, but it just wasn't top priority. So I'm trying to have
Right.
this battle with him, and then I'm trying to give my 2 cents to someone who, in her opinion, has already taken care of it in the best way that she should,
Yep.
you know?
Well, and
So
then aha moment, right? Because let's face it, here you're fighting all these battles. You're fighting your partner, you're fighting the ex, you're probably not helping your relationship with your stepdaughter. And to what end? And for what
for
what
what?
what do you get out of it? Oh wait, you're going to build resentment because then you go into that mindset of I'm doing all of this and nobody cares.
Nobody
Nobody
cares.
appreciates
Yeah.
it. And wait, now you're creating problems where they don't need to exist. So if you
Right.
just would step back, follow the 5 steps, ask
Mhm.
yourself why, and do the work on yourself,
Mhm.
man, there probably would be a lot better outcome most of the time. And look,
Yeah.
this doesn't apply to every single situation. There are
Of course not.
there are
No.
many, many situations that we could name that it truly is an actual medical or emotional or physical
That is yeah,
harming
that is different.
situation that sometimes there are extreme measures. There's all different kinds of situations in step families where maybe the other parent isn't in that child's life and you really are the other parent and between you and
Oh,
your
of
partner have to
course.
figure it out. Like so
Yeah.
just caveat for everyone listening, we're not saying
Yeah.
this applies as a blanket across
No,
every
don't
single situation that comes up, but just generally speaking, for the normal,
yeah.
like, you know,
The
every
everyday things.
right,
Yeah,
the
the everyday
normal.
things that come up that yeah, that is the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Mhm.
Well, this is such an important topic, and this comes up often in our coaching practices and in talking with other stepmoms in our community. So, we actually built a whole ebook around this, the unofficial guide to becoming an empowered stepmom. It's available on our website, theartofblendedchaos.com. So if you're
Mhm.
interested to dig into the details or want to have the 5 steps and all of the supporting materials around that, you can go find that there. Any last thoughts for our listeners, Amelia?
Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like we covered so much. I do hope if you are a stepmom that is struggling to know when and how to step back, take a few minutes, write down these 5 steps, or like you said, buy the ebook. Check it out. There's lots of good nuggets in there, not just those 5 steps. Because it truly is life-changing when you can figure out when and how,
Mhm.
and not doing it in a hostile way.
Absolutely.
It's definitely life-changing for me, if it was for my relationship, for my marriage,
And
which obviously.
the benefits go beyond just the relationships and step families. It benefits us
Mhm.
as a person in all of our relationships and aspects of our life. So,
Yeah.
funny how that works.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. It was fun
Alright.
catching up. We'll be back
Yeah,
next week with the next topic.
we will. A quick disclaimer to cover our asses. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on today's episode are the speaker's own, so if you didn't like them, why didn't you turn this off sooner?
The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. If you need support with a specific topic, you can do so by booking a one-on-one coaching call through our website, theartofblendedchaos.com. This podcast is not intended to replace professional, legal, or medical advice. You seriously didn't think we were lawyers or doctors, did you?